This video is on executive function. Like I said, most of the time I have too much anxiety to get anything done except speak. You guys don't get to see pretty pictures or my face or anything like that. This is a video about listening. In 2018, I had to fill out some paperwork about developmental disabilities. The problem is that that's an executive function issue, which is associated with autism. So, in order to get that paperwork done and filled out, I would need help in person. Step one was getting the paperwork, and beebe sent it through the mail, and I was supposed to have someone help me with it. Brenda Dickinson, that's where the mail was sent to, because I lost everything when Natalie died. It was all taken from me. I didn't want to stay with drug dealers anyway, especially given that these people take advantage of at the time, a 14-year-old. When I say these people, I mean in specific Ken Wilson and Leah Plunkett. They had been taking advantage of Leah's son and myself as well. And that's where a lot of this comes in, is that people don't understand executive function. So beebe did get that paperwork sent. By the time I got that paperwork, it was already a week overdue. Now, I had gone to see Brenda Dickinson the day before, and I was with a woman who I had rescued from Wyoming. And that woman's name is Desiree Leonard. She's used to be a mutual friend of mine, as well as Natalie's mother, Rose M. Kelly. Well, Brenda Dickinson and Des, they hit it off pretty good, and they talked for about 4 hours. Brenda didn't say a word about my paperwork or my mail, which, had my situation not been destroyed by Natalie's death, I would have been able to receive that mail myself instead of having to rely on someone else. When that paperwork got there, Brenda was not able to help me with it. She didn't even try. She had her own thing going on, and I always have to understand when somebody has something else going on. The problem is that my developmental disabilities are executive functioning issues, and as a result, that's where I needed help with the paperwork. Now, there wasn't just the problem of it had been sitting at Brenda Dickinson's for nearly 2 weeks by that point, and also the fact that Brenda never bothered to mention it, and the fact that she had not answered her phone or her door for that entire 2 weeks. It wasn't until I showed up with Desiree that she actually bothered. This was a few days before the 4th of July in 2018. since Brenda wasn't able to, and I really needed help, I was having a severe panic attack when I went over to see the Martindales. Um, Josh Martindale and the rest of the family, they were too busy talking to hear me. And they said that my panic attack was inappropriate and to come back tomorrow. Justine said that she would help me. So the next day, I went over there to get help with Justine. And although the paperwork was a week past when it needed to be filled out, it wasn't my fault that I didn't receive it. It also was not my fault that I was unable to fill it out because of those executive functioning abilities. A lot of people believe that if you're intelligent and autistic, that you magically don't have autism, or you magically don't have any of the issues that are associated with autism, including executive functioning disabilities. Whereas most of us have those problems. We have to be taught. And under extreme situations, it's difficult, especially when most people are not familiar with autism. They say that they are, but they're really not. They're familiar with TV autism, much like people are familiar with TV Tourette syndrome, where everybody curses. After Natalie died, a lot of people were making excuses for me that were not correct. And I personally didn't like that. I wasn't cursing because I have Tourette syndrome. I was cursing because I needed to put emphasis on how terrible the situation is. By the time the 4th of July was almost there, that's when annually the Martindale family comes from all over the place. Denver, all over the place. And they come to Chapel, Nebraska to go to Rick and Pam Martindale's house. That includes William Barr, a former officer, one who told me that the email or the Craigslist ad between Natalie Bollinger and Joseph Michael Lopez was real. Well, since Justine had told me that she would help me with it, Jen Beebe, she wanted to know if I had somebody in person to help me with it, and I said no. And she wasn't able to come and help me with it. It was already a week overdue from when it was supposed to be turned in, and I had just received it. There wasn't anything that filling out that paperwork would have actually done at that point. I was hoping. But when I came back the next day, and William Barr was there, and so was Justine Martindale. Justine didn't bother to tell me that she wasn't going to help me because her family had asked her not to. Now, who is it that told me that her family told her not to help me? That was William Barr, the former police officer in Denver. I believe he was actually part of the sheriff's department. So Will explained to me that in a court of law that I am just a number. I already knew that. But also I'm a homeless number, which means I don't matter. I'm jail fodder. Now Justine was going to help me, and she told me what time to go over there, and I went over there. I was about 15 minutes early. Instead of helping me with the paperwork like she had said that she was going to, she was busy with other things. And it wasn't until about 9 o'clock at night that she told me that she wasn't going to help me. Now, she didn't say, I'm not going to help you. What she said is, can't you do it yourself? You just need to do it yourself. That's her misunderstanding and her bad assumption. No, I can't. That's the developmental disability. That's the executive functioning. So not only was the paperwork there too late because Brenda Dickinson didn't answer her door, which she doesn't want to admit to, she blames it all on me. She said, oh, well, the day before when you were here with that girl, that was Desiree, by the way. That's who that girl was. She said, you didn't say anything. Now, she didn't bother with typing that until over a year later when I was in Cheyenne. But that's neither here nor there. The thing is that that's the executive functioning issue. I have to have help. I am incapable of doing these things for myself. That's part of living with autism. I literally need someone in person to help me with these things. So when Justine didn't help, I was trying not to have a meltdown. I had to make a choice between driving my car off a cliff or doing something drastic to try to get someone to do something. It's not my fault that Justine didn't keep her word. By that time, I'd already had plenty of people not keep their word. So I waited until everybody was in their houses so that I wouldn't run anyone over. I drove back and forth through town, high speed, and slammed on my brakes. And then I'd turn around and do the same thing at the other end of town, honking my horn the whole time. I literally, there was nothing else I could do. What Justine had done by not understanding was the most cruel thing that she could have done. And she didn't bother to tell me that her family had asked her not to. And whether or not that's the truth, I don't know. I just know that that's what William Barr had said. And by the way, he didn't say that to me until years later. It's difficult to make the right decisions when people are dishonest with you. Justine should have been honest with me, but she wasn't. That's her bad. William Barr was not honest with me either. That was not my decision. That was his bad. Now, that paperwork for the developmental disability, without someone to help me with it, it didn't matter. When your developmental disabilities prevent you from doing the developmental disability paperwork, and then people use your intelligence as an excuse why it's okay, that does create a major issue. William Barr, the chances are pretty good that he was full of it. Now, William was throwing things in my face that were not my fault. And then he wanted to tell me about how he understands PTSD, about how he had killed people and how it affected him. But then again, he has family that helps and cares about him. I don't. I have one family member who cares enough to do so, but she has developmental disabilities as well. She is also, as a result of those disabilities, she is dependent upon my mother, who really does not help her. My mother is more of a manipulator. She has harmed her own children, but helped other people's children. I spent most of the day on the phone with a lady who is helping me. She's actually making these phone calls with me. She understands autism, and the more she looks at the stuff that I'm going through, she said that we have proof that there are no services in spades. And a lot of people, when you think of autism, a lot of times we take things literally, but we do know what different sayings mean. Like in spades means there's a lot, a whole lot. When Justine didn't help me with that developmental disability paperwork because her family had asked her not to, Justine didn't understand that she was sentencing me to hell. She was sentencing me to a life of cruelty. Same as when Natalie had lied in Virginia. The courts nationwide take advantage of vulnerable people, especially autistic people with executive functioning issues. And it's painful. It hurts. It hurts that because you have executive functioning issues, that your guilt will always be assumed. The only thing that you possibly have that can protect you from that is someone in person. Justine didn't understand how dire the situation was. Will did not understand how dire the situation was. Brenda Dickinson did not understand how dire the situation was, and Jen Beebe did not understand how dire the situation was. Because none of them understand executive functioning issues. That's the problem with neurotypicals. They seem to have problems stepping into someone else's shoes, where most autistic people can step right into yours. I finally have some peace and quiet where I can work on these things, and I have been working on these things. The developmental disability paperwork, it's important, and it needs to be done. There's a lady who's going to help me to do that over the phone. Jen Beebe could have done that. Jen Beebe could have made those phone calls with me, but she didn't. We had to do it through snail mail. And I had to wait, and I had to depend on somebody who didn't understand how important it was. And now she wants to play like she did nothing wrong, and that would be Brenda Dickinson. Now, Brenda could have taken the time to understand those executive functioning issues. Laura Nelson is very familiar with executive functioning issues. And that's where the courts, the police, the Bollingers, the Martindales, that's where they all miss everything. See, you don't understand until you've had to live it. And none of them had to live it. They didn't care how cruel what they had done really was. They just wanted to wipe their hands clean of it. People often have a habit of telling me to do things that I'm not capable of. I'm not capable because of the executive functioning problems. These people did not become bad people until they started making excuses why it's magically okay. Justine Martindale, she could speak up about the fact that I did go to her for help. William Barr could come forward about that as well. The reason that I chose to use Brenda Dickinson's mail instead of Shannon Alvarado's all the way in California is that I didn't have access to Shannon Alvarado. What am I going to do? Have people send everything to Shannon and then have her, what? Where's she going to send it? She's all the way in California. Brenda Dickinson was only a 2.5 hour drive away from Denver or Boulder. But these people, rather than listening to me and making at least some effort to understand, automatically got defensive and outright mean. That's not okay. But you know what? I know how to be mean. People don't like it when I'm mean back. They don't like it when I throw stuff back in their face the way that they were doing to me. Like Jen Beebe had done. Like Brenda Dickinson had done. Like the Martindales had done and William Barr had done. The difference between myself and William Barr is that William Barr killed people. He did not have the self-awareness enough to understand before doing so that it was something that he was going to have a moral issue with. That's what makes me smarter than William Barr. I already know that if I were to kill somebody, that's not something that I could live with. Now, William, he has family. When we talk about family, we need to break this down a bit. There's something called immediate family. That's the family that lives in your household. And even when things are bad, that's your familiarity. You need that too. You like to lie to yourself and tell yourself that you could handle it without them, but you've never been without them. When you are in an army barracks, those people in the barracks, that is your immediate family. When you are growing up until you turn 18, living with your parents and your siblings, that is your immediate family. When you're married and you have children, that is your immediate family. And they help you to process things. They help you to cope with things. And when you don't have them, well, you end up like me. There are some conversations that I recorded today that are very important, but they also have some people's names in them that it represents too much of a safety issue for me to allow them on the internet. That's because they are children. All of the names in this video, they're all adults. They are all adults who made bad decisions that affected me. And they made those decisions because not only did they not understand, they didn't want to try to understand. They wanted to argue instead. So much like Will did to me with throwing things in my face, I throw it back in Will's face that he's a murderer, that he killed people. I'm smarter than Will. I don't have to go kill somebody to know that it would hurt me to do so. Also, I don't have an immediate family. There is no distraction. For him, there's plenty. The way that he is able to at least somewhat cope with the people that he murdered is his wife, Jessica Martindale, and his son. All of these people, when they do something screwed up, they want to hide behind their families. It's not the entire Martindale family that screwed me over. It's not his wife and his son who screwed me over. It's not his wife and his son who lied to me. And I talked to Rick Martindale a couple of days ago. I showed him my clandestine recording device. I explained to him how it worked. I showed him that it was off. And I spoke to him man to man. Turns out Will is a dick. Rick Martindale had, according to him, no idea. No idea that was even going on. I just wish that I had had the ability to record the things that Will had said way back then in 2018. Will wants to hide behind his family and pretend like I would harm his family. Oh no, dude. Oh no. I would take a bullet for his son. I would take a bullet for his wife. Of course, that doesn't mean much when you don't have a whole lot of reason to live anymore. However, unlike Will, I've never killed anybody. Unlike Will, I'm not hiding behind my family. Unlike Will, I'm not playing victim. What he did was wrong. Now, if the things that he said were true, he should have no problem speaking out publicly about it. If the things that he said were true, he should have no problems talking to the courts about it. I do have Will's number and his name, and I told him that the whole world is going to know it, and I meant it. I also let him know that I am not going to contact him again. The next time he talks to me, it'll be through a lawyer. What he did was wrong, and he knows it. And that's why he's hiding behind his family and trying to pretend like I would do something harmful to his family. Now, if you ask my mom and my dad, if you ask my mom how many times I've ever hit her, how many times I've even ever gotten physically violent with her, she'll tell you 0. She's gotten physically violent with me plenty of times. Now, each of these people, when they make excuses for the terrible things that they do, they want to cite situations that they were not there for. Much like Paul Olson did. Much like Rod Wright did. Their excuses were situations that they weren't there for. Who else did that? Tabitha Michelle Cook and her boyfriend Graham and Lori Dale. A lot of people did this. Same thing with Lana Engeline and Amanda Engeline. See, none of these people could think of anything that I had ever done wrong to them. So they had to bring up hearsay and rumors of things they weren't there for. Most days, I am lucky if I have the ability to speak. If I can do something more than speak, I do. I have someone now helping me with those executive functioning issues. I have to translate words into pictures and then pictures back into words. Somebody who's autistic will understand that. The rest of you may not. When this lady was talking about how we have evidence that there are no services to actually help in spades, the picture that comes to mind, it's not a mountain of evidence, it's the ace of spades. The ace of spades. I suppose a comparison could be made with dyslexia. somebody with dyslexia, the words may not come together right, or letters seem backwards, or in the wrong order. Except that for us, it's in the right order. It's all where it needs to be, but it's all in pictures. And we have to translate that. There's also things that make executive functioning difficult. The reason that I became funny, I never really could follow a conversation between two people who talk over each other. The reason for this, because although I can differentiate the two voices, they're at the same time. Kind of like when the train goes by. I can't hear you. I can hear that you're speaking, but it's just a tone. It's not the actual words. I can't process the words that you're saying while the train is going by. So when the train is going by, if you stop and wait for the train to go by, then I can process what you're saying. I don't have the money for a civil lawyer. That's what all of these police officers prey on. When you try to turn in a police officer and their body camera's on, or they know that they're being recorded, they will talk over you, and it becomes a shouting match because they chose it. They are literally intentionally instigating the situation and doing everything that they can to play stupid. If they talk over you and instigate the situation in such a fashion, they get to play like you're the bad guy. That's what happens when you try to turn in a police officer, and you have to do so alone. There are a lot of recordings that I have, like the recordings with Tara Smith that I haven't posted. I have to go through and dig them out through probably several hundred recorded audio files. And I don't know what the exact date is, so I just have to approximate. I know that it was well before December, and that helps. But also, in the beginning, I wasn't calling Justine Martindale a terrible person. I wasn't calling William Barr a terrible person. I wasn't calling Brenda Dickinson a terrible person. I wasn't calling any of these people terrible people. It's when they took it that way that they became terrible people. Because rather than admit they didn't understand or admit that they were wrong, they decided to hide it and play victim. And that's when they ended up on my YouTube channel. This is what people who are autistic have to deal with worldwide, not just here in America. But also, you see how terrible the so-called justice system is just for people with children. Children are good money. The state loves children. Why does the state love children? Because they can extort money out of parents by abusing those children, or rather, abusing the fact that those children exist. Also, you get to see how males are the primary targets. Why is this? Because a jury has no sympathy for a male. American bias has no sympathy for a male. And that's before you ever encounter a situation where somebody is autistic with executive functioning issues. What Scott DaCosta did was abhorrent, but he and his officers did it repeatedly and took advantage of my executive functioning issues, as well as my lack of an immediate family. And they were able to abuse that to cut me off from resources. And they were able to use other people's children in order to scare them away from helping me. This needs to stop. See, just like the Bollinger family, Scott DaCosta took advantage of the term mentally ill. Now, he said to me, I didn't use the term mentally ill. It doesn't matter if you use the term. It's the act itself that is important. When you give someone the mentally ill treatment, like when somebody has been bullied to the point that they want their life to end, and they want their life to end specifically because of something that you have done, but you can use your position of power to prevent them from turning you in by, well, locking them up in one fashion or another, or removing their resources through intimidation, as Scott DaCosta did. We have a major issue. I'm trying to stay calm and speak as calmly as I can. I understand that I have no chance at all of winning anything without help because of my executive functioning issues. With those executive functioning issues existing no matter what, whether you drug me or incarcerate me or beat me up, I'm still autistic. Those executive functioning issues are still present. People are quite fond of telling people who have executive functioning issues or autism what to do, how to think, and how to feel. There's a lot of people who say they're not lawyers, they can't help me because they're not a lawyer. But then they want to, as Anna did the other day, and Tony DeStasi, and hundreds of others, they become pocket lawyers. They're not really lawyers. They want to give you all the advice in the world and then say, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't need you to be a lawyer. With Tony DeStasi, I didn't call him up to ask for advice. Everybody wants to distribute advice. Advice is like drops in a waterfall. Everybody's got some advice. Everybody thinks that their advice is going to fix everything. But in reality, they're really just dropping. Like everyone else, they're just dropping. Maybe we could make the reference to raindrops instead. You're still falling, are you not? It doesn't help. Advice is not what I need. What I need is understanding. And you can't understand when you're busy giving advice. You tell me that you're not a lawyer, so you can't help me, but then you want to give me legal advice. I don't need legal advice. I need help with executive functioning. Jen Beebe did not help me with executive functioning. Brenda Dickinson did not help me with executive functioning. William Barr did not help me with executive functioning. Justine Martindale, aka Justine Marks, did not help me with executive functioning. Rather, they treated me like trash for my executive functioning issues and played victim because they wanted to take things as terribly as they could in texting, knowing that they had done something wrong. Justine knew that when she didn't tell me the truth and couldn't bring herself to tell me the truth all day long, she wasted a whole day of my life. While I was under an extreme situation, being assaulted by people in Chapel, Nebraska and elsewhere, having my life threatened by people in Chapel, Nebraska and elsewhere. But Justine did not want to understand. I also found out today that the most anti-gun person that I've known in my lifetime, my mother, Angela K. Wade, now owns a gun. Why does she own a gun? Because of the state of affairs here in the United States. Because of how rotten and crooked and corrupt our government is. Now, all these people, rather than admit that they made a mistake, they want to hold on to their pride. Even at the expense of human lives, and that is why I am so disgusted by all of this.